and we can begin our conversation with the word progressive. Reed, it appears that you find that word offensive now. You want to tell us why you find it offensive? I have some gripes with that word too, and I removed it from like my background header that I have on my channel. Like I used to say progressive political commentary, now it just says political commentary. But I want to hear from you first.
Yeah, so as Dax said before we started recording, I have been referred to as progressive, and uh, even with what the mainstream meaning of that word means, it's obviously not my political philosophy. If anyone watches any of my stuff, I just think it's unfortunate that it's come to not mean anything anymore. It kind of, to a lot of people, it almost seems like it means anything against the mainstream narrative, but it's also been co-opted by a lot of people who kind of support the mainstream narrative. So it's just a completely meaningless word. But I also am annoyed that, if you're anti-war, then you're a progressive. If you're anti-Patriot Act, it makes you a progressive. I don't think that's fair because progressives don't have a monopoly on those issues. They don't have a monopoly on the drug war, being against the drug war. They don't have a monopoly on being against, selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. And they act like they do. They act like those are their causes. Where in American politics, a lot of those causes were actually brought to the forefront by Ron Paul in his 2012 presidential run. And yet they want to claim, a monopoly on all those things. So, the mix of them trying to co-opt everything that seems anti-establishment while simultaneously kind of supporting the establishment makes me just cringe whenever someone is referred to as a progressive. When I was working on Tulsi's campaign, whenever someone would call her a progressive or she's the only true progressive or whatever, it always made me question whether or not I should be supporting her campaign. So it's just a word I really don't like.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel the same way, and I was started feeling like me having that label associated with me on my channel, and the way that I approach my analysis might deter some people away. Like might turn some people off before even watching any of my videos. And I think it's because people associate it with like people like TYT who call themselves progressive, even though they cheerlead for the establishment all the time.
Right.
So I need to do some searching on like the actual meaning of what progressive actually means. But for now, I'm just a political commentator. Just put whatever label you want to put on me. I lean socialist, but like what we discussed when I was on your show, Reed, I'm not a dogmatic person. Like my ideas are going to be molded the more I learn. Dak, do you want to add on to anything that me and Reed discussed about the word progressive?
Yeah, I think that American political culture deliberately tries to pervert and distort all of these political labels. Like the fact that in the United States, Democrat and Republican have nothing to do with their historical definitions, which would be small d Democrat, small r Republican. And in which case, Tulsi Gabbard would definitely be a small r Republican. When people tried to describe her as some kind of like progressive, it almost seems like they're referring to her as a populist, which was not her style in the least. And Neera Tanden in the mainstream is considered a progressive. I mean, she calls her think tank the Center for American Progress, and I'm not sure what exactly her progressive bona fides are. I think that she's a pretty good case study, and we're going to talk a little bit about Neera Tanden later in this discussion, I believe. But yeah, what Reed mentioned about Ron Paul, I have said it before and I'll say it again. The people who want to talk about Tulsi Gabbard's campaign without ever having researched or preferably experienced what happened to Ron Paul in 2012, I'm not really interested in their opinion because they don't understand how the demonization of candidates who are problematic to the establishment, that is a bipartisan issue. And that's why you have people who can support Ron Paul and Tulsi Gabbard, or 8 years ago, it was people who supported Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich, even though their political views are separate. And at some point, Reed and I need to have a debate about whether or not government assistance during this pandemic should be a thing, because I think it is actually compatible with libertarianism, but that's a different story. But that's why I'm not interested in the labels, because I think that when you try to adhere to these labels, you're setting yourself up for you're denying yourself the opportunity to recognize where the political philosophy fails, or where another political philosophy could possibly be of use. And that's why we now have the term neo-progressive, which would probably apply to a commentator like Michael Tracy.
Oh, wow. Like Michael, I don't know what to call Michael Tracy. He doesn't really fit in with like the TYT crowd or like Humanist Report crowd, but he certainly has a lot of stuff that he believes in that, I don't agree with, and I think you guys here don't agree with either. But yeah, labels, they confuse people. Is there anything like that we can use to describe people who are able to see our politics more objectively, beyond the partisanship? Like, how do you guys feel about a word like post-partisan? And this is a question also for my audience here. How do you guys feel about the word post-partisan? Would you guys consider that a better word to describe your views?
Sure. I don't know. I mean, I think that it's unfortunate that the word libertarian has a right-wing connotation to it, because it doesn't in other countries. I really like that label because I think it spans right and left ideologies, but I don't really care. I mean, if it's post-partisans, fine. I guess I don't really know much about the connotations of that term. Is that a new one, or?
It just means you're not going to cheerlead for one side. You just have your own views. So it can be very general. There's a lot of nuances with being post-partisan. Like, you're still going to retain some elements from a certain ideology.
Well, like the term postmodern, that term is misused so extensively in society. Like, the thing is, we live in a postmodern society, whether people want to agree with it or not. Like, if you describe a philosopher as a postmodernist philosopher, people are going to think that the philosopher is embracing postmodernism. The person thinks that postmodernism is a good thing, when that is not necessarily the case. I mean, postmodern is just the description of the type of society and culture in which we live at present. I'm not a Marxist, but Marxist artistic analysis I find often to be quite helpful. So yeah, I this idea of using labels and then trying to defend the labels, I think it just really denies people the opportunity to learn and to grow. They're useless.
Well, we are getting. I've seen a lot of partisanship from some people regarding Biden's cabinet picks, which I was really disappointed in, by outlets that I thought were more, post-partisan or progressive, like the Common Dreams. There was an article where they were praising Alejandro Mayorkas, and we're about to get into Biden's cabinet picks right now. Let's start out with the biggest one. I have him on the thumbnail, Antony Blinken. And Dak, you had a great video on your channel, on your show Overwritten Extra, where you were talking about his record and what he's likely to do. So you want to start out by introducing the audience to who Antony Blinken is, and what do you think he's going to do in the next 4 to 8 years?
Yes. So Antony Blinken is Biden's President-elect Joe Biden's nominee for Secretary of State. He's set to replace Mike Pompeo. And what's interesting is that Antony Blinken's views, we don't need to refer to WikiLeaks or any type of muckraking organization, because Newsweek actually published an article that tells us pretty much everything we need to know. The article is titled, "What what Antony Blinken has said about key foreign policy issues. And I included a link to that in the aforementioned over an extra video. So Antony Blinken is first of all, if you just go through the article, you'll see that he is a hardcore Russiagator. He has been very critical of the Trump administration for not isolating Russia. I don't know what isolating Russia means, but he has called for the United States to undermine Russia politically in the international community. Presumably, he would like to include sanctions. And he has obviously subscribed wholeheartedly to the theory that Russia interfered in the election. And he would like to see the First Amendment effectively repealed in order to prevent Russian misinformation, as he terms it, from becoming a political issue in the future. That's just the very beginning. I mean, I didn't want to talk for a whole half hour about this guy, but all the stuff you need to know about him is right there in the Newsweek article, a very mainstream publication.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this, Reed? Did you look into Antony Blinken at all, or is this your first time hearing information about him by Dak?
I haven't watched Dak's video yet. I've been on vacation. I don't know a lot about him, but the few Google searches I did on him when I heard that he was going to be the nominee, yeah, I'm not impressed, but I'm also not surprised. I don't know why anyone would be surprised. I mean, that's what's weird about this whole thing is, especially my audience on my show, people are angry. Some people are angry that I'm too hard on Trump or that I'm not hard enough on Biden, but I don't have Biden supporters watching my show. And so I'm not hitting them over a head with a brick saying, see, this guy's a warmonger. See, this guy's a corporatist. See, this guy's, supports the national security state. They all know that. So my show is mostly going after how we're not losing anything with Trump going away. That's more what I've been talking about. But
it's like, it would be like telling them water is wet if you just hit on them on like Biden's corruption and all that.
Yeah.
Blinken was on Sesame Street, and the Convo Couch played a video of Antony Blinken talking to Grover, talking about refugees and how, we got to think about these people who leave their homes. And then Grover was like, I can't imagine myself leaving Sesame Street. They're already trying to indoctrinate people into liking him. And I feel like the same with a lot of Biden's cabinet picks, a lot of people like Obama. There are these people that have like this nice guy or nice woman appearance, but in actuality they're monsters, and they have a lot of connections with intelligence, with all these lobbyists. Dak, did you mention like any connections that Antony Blinken has with any lobbyists or intelligence? There is something that I want to mention, but I want to hear from you first.
Well, for those who care about this, he is a sitting member of the Council on Foreign Relations. You were asking about his stance on like military intelligence. Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, he subscribes to Russiagate, and he has accused WikiLeaks of colluding with the Russian government in order to hack into the DNC. He came into prominence recently because Rashida Tlaib was criticizing him for being a supporter of the Israeli government. He has said, we have a quote here, Blinken said a Biden administration would restore U.S. assistance to Palestinian authorities, but said it would not condition Israeli aid on its honoring international agreements and the two-state solution. He would not tie military assistance to Israel to any political decisions it makes, full stops. That's a profound reason why he'd never walk away from Israel's security, even if at times he might disagree with some of its policies. So in other words, Antony Blinken is going, and the Biden administration at large is going to give the Israeli government carte blanche to violate any international law it pleases, to commit any number of human rights abuses, war crimes, etc. And the Biden administration will do absolutely nothing about it. This is probably in response to Netanyahu visiting the United States and being received by congressional Republicans and permitted to make a speech denouncing Barack Obama for not being supportive enough of Israel.
So, in other words, a continuation of Trump and Pompeo's love fest with Netanyahu and Israel. And isn't that's going to escalate tensions with Iran and other people who are other countries who are enemies of Israel? So yeah, it is what Biden said. Nothing is going to fundamentally change. It's just the faces that are different. And then I don't know if you saw this post, Dak and Reed, but Max Blumenthal tweeted out something really interesting regarding Blinken. He said Blinken's late stepfather was Samuel Pizer, the longtime lawyer and confidant of Robert Maxwell, a Mossad agent and father of Ghislaine Maxwell. Pizer was perhaps the last person to speak to Robert Maxwell before he died after falling off his yacht. And then he linked to an article on Scotsman.com. So what do you guys think about these connections with Mossad and Ghislaine Maxwell and Robert Maxwell? What do you think this is all gonna mean?
You can go first, Dak.
Well, Blinken, in addition to being a hardcore cheerleader for Israel, he's mentioned his late stepfather in the past because he was allegedly in Auschwitz and possibly one other concentration camp. This is used to try to obviously make him seem like a very sympathetic person. He has said that the reason we have to support Israel is to prevent the rise of the formation of another Holocaust situation, which is completely untrue. So I'm not at all surprised to see that the connections to the Israeli lobby go even deeper than that. And I did see the Max Blumenthal tweet that you mentioned. And obviously you'd like to know how deep the Epstein connection goes, but we can't rely on the corporate media to do any of that kind of investigative journalism.
Of course. What are your thoughts, Reed? Did you look into anything deep about Ghislaine and the pedophile sex ring or anything?
Oh yeah, is it Ghislaine or Jelaine? I've heard her name.
Dak knows how to pronounce it, right?
What's that?
You know how to pronounce her name, right?
I think it's just Ghislaine. I don't know. It's the Epstein lady.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked a bit into that when she was found in New Hampshire. Not what was it, Bradford, New Hampshire, Dak? Or?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, back in the summer at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And to my detriment, I didn't actually know that much about her. I got, when the Epstein suicide took place, I started looking more into that. I really didn't know much about it before last year. But as far as Biden's cabinet picks being well connected, it's kind of interesting that even though Trump had, I would say, no idea what he was doing when he was picking cabinet positions when he started, it's amazing how well connected all of his cabinet positions were too. And it just shows you that the oligarchy extends beyond the executive branch. It's a massive web of roots that continues to be the same regardless of who the president is. And I don't know. I think if somebody who really wanted to rock the boat got in there, they might not be successful. They might end up dying somehow or something. It's just depressing to see the continuation of the connections and things just not changing at all.
You bring up a great point about Biden being well connected because he's been there for decades. Dak, you brought up a point last time you were on here. If we were to give an age to the amount of time that Biden was here, it would be equivalent to a woman being on menopause at this point. So if the U.S. has been doing evil shit all these years, what made people think that voting Biden in would be anything better than Trump? Like anything significantly better? He's just going to bring all these well-connected people so we can continue all the evil shit that we've already been doing. So the next person on our list here is Ron Klain, who Biden is selecting as the chief of staff. So this is from an article on National Review, which says WikiLeaks has released another 700 hacked emails from John Podesta's account. The fifth tranche, one is already getting a great deal of attention. Ron Klain, who was Vice President Joe Biden's chief of staff for the first 2 years of Obama's administration, later wrote to Podesta about playing a role in the demise of Biden's 2016 presidential run. He thanked Podesta for helping him land on his feet in the Hillary Clinton campaign. She was great last night. Thanks for inviting me into the campaign and for sticking with me during the Biden anxiety. That's what Klain wrote in his email. You are a great friend and a great leader. It's been a little hard for me to play such a role in the Biden demise, and I am definitely dead to them, but I'm glad to be on Team HRC and glad that she had a great debate last night. Thanks, John. The references to she, who was great in a debate previous evening, are clearly Hillary Clinton. She did, in fact, participate in a Democratic candidate debate on October 13, 2015. So it seems like Ron Klain is not a loyal guy to any particular person, but he is a loyal guy to the establishment, to the machine. And because the machine was leaning towards Hillary Clinton, that's who he chose to back. Some more quotes here. This is from the Washington Examiner. Ron Klain served in the Clinton and Obama administration, and in between, he was a lobbyist for K Street firm, O'Melveny and Myers. Klain was also a lobbyist for ImClone, a pharmaceutical company that would be investigated by Congress for fraud. ImClone's founder and CEO, Sam Waxall, would be convicted for fraud. So he is a corporatist through and through. He has a record of being tied to all these lobbyist firms. Dak, did you do any other research on Ron Klain, and what are your thoughts on some of the stuff that I just said about Ron Klain?
I didn't look into Ron Klain extensively. I saw that he was the chief of staff, as you mentioned, not only to Vice President Biden, but he was also chief of staff to Vice President Al Gore from 1995 to 1999. And so the fact that he was standing by Gore and Biden through the Clinton administration and then the Obama administration would suggest that he supports what those men did when they were in power. So that really tells you all you need to know. In his case specifically, and the fact that he's coming back means that Joe Biden is going to pursue a political philosophy that is similar, if not identical, to that which he manifested during his time in the Obama administration. So when Joe Biden claims that this is not just going to be Obama's third term, but that the administration is going to be very different, he's obviously lying through his teeth. One interesting thing I noticed was that Klain was selected as the Ebola response coordinator by the Obama administration, even though he had absolutely no expertise or familiarity with the subject of public health. That's a decision that could have been scrutinized for incompetence, as it would have been if Donald Trump had made the selection. But because it's Barack Obama, the media went very easy on him. It's suggestive of cronyism, which is probably as good an explanation as any for why he is going to serve in the new Biden administration.
Reed, you have any thoughts on this guy?
Again, like I told you guys, I didn't have time to do any homework on much of this, so I don't really know much about him. The only thing I wanted to say on what you said was, why did people vote for Biden when they thought he'd be better or less evil?
Yeah.
Most people don't know anything about our foreign policy or about our monetary policy or anything. You know, it's just Trump says mean things and he's racist, so it's going to be better to have someone else. So I don't think that foreign policy or national security is really something that most voters take into effect when they were voting for Biden. So even if you told them all this stuff about his picks, I don't think it would have much of an impact on them in the first place.
And one of those people who don't know much about foreign policy, and some of her supporters, I'm sorry to say if there's any out there, but you got to inform yourself more on foreign policy. AOC, and at least her knowledge on foreign policy. AOC was praising Ron Klain, and she said that this is good news and that it's encouraging. Um, this is
What was her evidence of that? Why
she
is
just
it
said it.
encouraging?
That's all she said. She was like good news and encouraging choice with a thumbs up emoji. So I just really hope more people start realizing how much of a fraud AOC is. Like she's not who people think she is. Like she's not challenging the establishment. Like she's supposed to be an enemy to a guy like Ron Klain, but here she is praising this guy.
Yeah, you don't get invited on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert because you're a good person.
At least not like in this day and age. What the heck happened to him? Like he used to be so much better.
Money.
Yeah. I used to think Bill Maher was good too, so
Yeah.
I don't know. And yeah, I think it's money and fame. And I was on Dak's show, and I was at the pizza place with you in New Hampshire, and we were talking about how it goes to people's heads when they're celebrities of some cause or some movement, or they have tons of fans. They can't help but change who they are because the ego takes over. So
Yeah, what I said is if you have like a Twitter following of over 100,000 people, and even the most mundane tweet you send out there will receive a significant reaction, it's obviously going to be pumping up your ego, and you're going to become full of yourself to a certain extent, no matter how hard you try to prevent that sort of thing. And as for Bill Maher, I just wanted to say some of these people that we're talking about, not Antony Blinken or Ron Klain, but some of the other people we're going to be talking about in this video, they have been regular guests on Real Time with Bill Maher.
Wow.
And now they're going to be serving in the federal government, which not only raises uncomfortable questions about the relationship of media and state, but also raises questions about how is Bill Maher going to be able to criticize these people publicly when he has been feeding at the same trough as they for the last several years. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Bill Maher relinquish his show on HBO because he simply can't bring himself to take these people to task.
What do you guys think? Stephen Colbert and Bill Maher, are they just useful idiots or are they controlled opposition?
I think Bill Maher was really good for a long time, and he was a huge critic of the empire. You know, he lost his show because he made some controversial comments about 9/11. And then he had Ron Paul on his show in 2008 and was saying he was his new hero because he was fighting all these Republican ghouls on our imperialist tendencies. But I think he just, like a lot of people, he just got co-opted under the Obama years. You know, it just, the criticisms sort of died. You're seeing that happen with the Republicans under Trump. You know, there's no stance for fiscal responsibility or family values or whatever they say they like to stand for. And that just happened with the Democrats too. And I think Bill Maher was just part of that. And I mean, it was a slow transformation. I didn't see him just switch overnight. He slowly started saying things that were more and more confusing. And he still says things occasionally that I really agree with. And he'll sometimes take a stand that's kind of controversial, but nothing of meat anymore. He's kind of been turned into one of them. So
I don't think Bill Maher was ever good. I think that there were isolated moments when he was good. Like, yeah, I saw that interview he did with Ron Paul, but he also invited Ron Paul back within a year or two and was basically making fun of him for the whole segment. He also made fun of Ron Paul behind his back on other occasions. I think that Bill Maher, I don't think he's a useful idiot, but I don't think he's controlled opposition either. I think that he is a very useful propagandist for the establishment and the ruling class. And I think that there are powerful people who are protecting him because I think it was 3 years ago, he referred to himself by the N-word on his show. Wow. And the social justice warriors they criticized him, but they never called for his head or got him removed from the show the way that they did a lot of other commentators. He also has a long history of making controversial comments about Islam, to say the very least. You can go back and watch the stuff he says. It does wander into the realm of Islamophobia on occasion, at least. But he's never been held accountable for any of that. I think that there are powerful people who protect him because they see that he's such a useful mouthpiece.
Yeah, shout out to everybody on the chat. I'm really glad you guys are all here. It seems like people are really itching to hear more about Neera Tanden. Prop, I know that she's the reason why you were kicked out of Twitter. But Dak, what position is Biden trying to put her on?
Oh, Neera Tanden?
Yeah.
Neera Tanden is going to be on the Office of Management and Budget. She's going to be the director. Now, the current executive, I'm trying to find this out right now. I'm just taking a quick look at this. Neera Tanden, by the way, was one of Bill Maher's regular guests. She's been on his show several times and has revealed that she knows absolutely nothing about the Second Amendment or about guns in general.
That's true.
What's that?
I said that's true. Yes.
Yes. So Neera Tanden being selected to this position is very, very interesting because Neera Tanden, despite the fact that she's referred to as a progressive, has been the most vocal critic out there, not just of Bernie Sanders, but also of everything that Bernie Sanders has advocated for. During the pandemic, people were telling her that now might be a good time to consider the possibility of universal health care, and she was arguing against that because she's such a big supporter of the health insurance lobby in the pharmaceutical industry. So Joe Biden selecting such a fierce enemy of progressivism. I mean, she's basically a punchline on progressive Twitter. The idea that Joe Biden would select her is such a risky move that actually the BBC published an article today questioning whether or not she was actually going to be approved by the Senate. Republicans despise her, and Republicans do hold a majority at the moment, and progressives are not going to be inclined to support her. I mean, I'm sure Bernie Sanders will lie down and allow her to sodomize him once again, but there's going to be some serious pushback from people. I'm not sure that she's actually going to hold this post.
What was her position on the Second Amendment, Reed?
Oh, well,
I mean, I can imagine, but what are some of the things that she said?
Well, I actually know her mostly from I used to watch Bill Maher's show a lot, and she was a very regular guest. And there was one show where they had Colion Noir.
That's the one I was talking about.
Oh, that's the one you're talking about, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think they talked about the stand your ground law was one thing that I remember. And the stand your ground law, Dak and I were just talking about this when I saw him. If you have an exit that you can escape out of, you're not allowed, or it's going to be hard to defend yourself in court if you defend yourself with a gun without trying to run out of the door. So unless your back is literally to a wall and there's nothing else you can do, if someone's shooting at you, then you can shoot them. And she's against that decision. I know she's against pretty much every Second Amendment idea out there. I mean, she's against. I think she's kind of an extremist, actually. I think and this is the weird thing about anti-gun extremists. I don't know how serious they are because they know it's a position that is unrealistic. But she wants pretty much every single gun control idea that has ever surfaced to be implemented. And everyone should watch that episode with Bill Maher and Colion Noir and Neera Tanden, and she just makes an idiot out of herself on stage because she doesn't know anything about guns. I think they were talking about the assault weapons ban, and that was really revealed that she doesn't know the difference between any types of functions of firearms. And Colion Noir is one of the few eloquent defenders of the NRA. I'm not a fan of the NRA, but he's one of the few people that I think actually makes good cases for them. And he took her to task with a liberal audience that didn't really shear him off the stage on Neera Tanden's side. So it's a good episode to check out. I can send you a link to it or something. So
yeah. Sure.
What Noir said, they showed the photographs of the man who was found to have hundreds of rifles in his home, and this was supposed to terrify the liberal audience. Colin Noir said he only has 2 hands, to which Neera Tanden replied, aghast, "What do you mean he has only 2 hands? What does that mean?" She was, yeah.
With her voice.
Yeah.
So, Dak, you probably read into this more, but didn't she play a crucial role, a key role in the DNC rigging against Bernie Sanders in the WikiLeaks files? What does WikiLeaks say about Neera Tanden?
Well, what WikiLeaks shows is that she has a very close relationship to John Podesta. The WikiLeaks releases are known to as the Podesta emails, because she was one of the most provocative statements that she made during her time associated not just with Podesta but also with Hillary Clinton, was when she had talked about the possibility of Libya paying the United States in oil for what we had done. It's a famous quote of hers. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but she said they have.
I saw Richard Medhurst pull it up. I think I can look for it and then read it if I find it.
Yeah, it's like Syria has a lot of oil. We have a big deficit, something like that.
Yes, yeah. Syria, not Libya. I apologize. Yes. Now I'm looking at a few other things. She's also a hardcore Russiagator. She's gone on Bill Maher and has insisted that WikiLeaks has coordinated with the Russian government. She's also said that WikiLeaks is a pro-Trump organization, which is the furthest thing from the truth. This was during the same episode when Roger Stone went on Real Time. Neera Tanden was just one of his guests there. And she she is, like we were talking earlier about Ron Klein serving in various capacities. Neera Tanden served on several Democratic presidential campaigns. She worked with Michael Dukakis all the way back in '88, Bill Clinton in '92, Barack Obama in 2008, Hillary Clinton in 2016. She was a campaign advisor. She was apparently she helped draft the Affordable Care Act, and she had also worked on Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008. So if you're expecting a significant shift from the status quo, then you don't know what you're talking about, because this woman is as rooted within the establishment as you can possibly be. More of the same.
Yeah, and their goal is to strengthen that establishment. So things are going to get progressively worse and worse. So that's what nothing will fundamentally change. It means that nothing will fundamentally change in terms of the progress that's going towards benefiting the elite. I think it's only a matter of time if Biden does choose her, for Bernie to praise her, for AOC to praise her. How do you guys think that people on the left, at least, are going to take that, considering, everything, all the horrible shit that she did against Bernie Sanders and his supporters?
They'll take it lying down. I was so mad when Rand Paul was talking about blocking Mike Pompeo's nomination, and he hammed it all up. He was going to filibuster it and everything, and then he ended up just rolling over and voting for him, when I think he could have actually it was a pretty close vote, and I believe, and he could have made a difference, but Trump kind of slapped him on the wrist and said, "Hey, you got to do this." They'll do the same thing with Bernie. That's why I'm just done with Democrats and Republicans, because I just don't care. they're just they're so lame. I mean, you occasionally get someone like Tulsi or Ron Paul, but 99% of them they're jokes. They grandstand, and then ultimately they just roll over. And the people that do that are the most dangerous to your movement, the ones who grandstand and then vote with the establishment. And that's what almost all of the progressive people in Congress do, I think. And I don't think that there are enough people holding their politicians accountable, because no one really cares about voting records. They only care about speeches and excitement. And so I think they'll ultimately just roll over with it. They'll see a few people like you and a few others, but the most part, I think it'll just happen. So
Neera Tanden continues the problem, not just with the relationship of media and state, because she hasn't just been on Bill Maher. She's also contributed to MSNBC, CNN. She's even been on Fox in the past. And apparently, I learned today she used to have a regular column for the New Republic. But the thing is, Neera Tanden is a personal friend of Hillary Clinton's, not just a colleague of hers. And so when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, Neera Tanden presumably lost some type of position within the administration. Would it have been this directorship of the Office of Management and Budget, or would it have been something else? We don't know. But the thing is, because of that, she has had a personal vendetta against Trump, Bernie Sanders, WikiLeaks, and anybody else who had presented any kind of opposition to Hillary Clinton. And so that's what she is on Twitter. She's a propagandist because she's been desperately trying to get herself a job within the Biden administration if and when it came to fruition. And here we are. She's getting what she wants. And this is going to drive the progressives nuts because they absolutely hate this woman, and the idea that she would be rewarded with such a powerful governmental position, it's really going to be something that they just cannot forgive.
This is one last thing to close off on the Neera Tanden thing. This is something that needs to be called out because more people need to realize who are the honest actors and who are not the honest actors on the left. Cenk Uygur tweeted this out about Neera Tanden. He said, Neera Tanden has been waiting for this appointment for 4 unending years now. All of her hard work inside the establishment paid off, and now she's in a power position to help direct world's largest resources. Now we're going to find out who she is, and so is she. Rooting for her. Rooting for her. Why are you rooting for her? We know who she is. She's shown who she was all these years that she's worked for the establishment. And more people need to realize who people like Cenk Uygur are. This is somebody who receives money from Clinton surrogates, and then you think that that's not going to affect the way that he delivers the news. It's just so frustrating to see how there's so many people that still trust these people like Cenk Uygur. But Reed and Dak, what do you guys think about this tweet?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of, Austin Peterson is the libertarians guy who's kind of doing the same thing. Like he has been in the Libertarian Party for so long, and then, he started moving away from it, and he just full on was simping for Trump this year. And it's got to feel kind of the same way. Like Cenk Uygur is a very similar guy. You could see it coming for a long time. I actually used to watch him back in Obama's years, because I thought they were actually somewhat journalistic and somewhat independent. But kind of like Bill Maher, they just slowly got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
But I don't personally know anyone who actually thought Biden would be progressive, who would consider themselves a leftist, who voted for him. I just think they thought Trump was slightly worse. I really don't, aside from seeing some people on Twitter who I don't know how serious they are, I don't know any serious progressive who thought, yes, Biden is my guy and he's going to appoint people I like and do things I want him to do. I don't think that's a very widespread opinion. And I think we're acting like it is wider than it is. I felt like you really only saw that from politicians. Like you only saw it from Bernie Sanders saying he is going to be the most progressive since FDR or whatever. I didn't meet anyone in real life who thought that. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is that I did know offline some hardcore Bernie Sanders supporters who decided to vote for Biden because they thought he was going to appoint left-leaning judges, whatever that means. But obviously, therefore, they're not serious progressives. I think that Bernie Sanders was encouraged to run the second time around by the DNC because they knew that he was going to be very helpful in shepherding progressives, serious or not, into the fold when Bernie Sanders would lose. And the fact that he went and claimed that he was going to hold a position in Biden's cabinet, and then it turns out that he's not going to.
Yeah.
I mean, this man is a liar. And I see certain people on Twitter, such as what's his name, Walker Bragman or whatever his name is.
God.
He was the biggest Bernie Sanders
Yeah.
cheerleader, and now he's trying to rebuild his brand as Biden's biggest critic. But he doesn't understand his own role in brainwashing people and convincing them that Bernie Sanders was a person worth trusting.
They fit the definition of a grifter. They're grifting people
Yeah.
to the establishment. And like you said, it's not just Walker, but also I think TYT. They're gonna make a living off of criticizing Biden now, as if they didn't help to get him elected. I want to right now take the time to appreciate the chat. I see Matthew Bruss, Implicate Warlorder, Trashman Jake. I saw Zach Ortega giving some love on the chat, telling people to like the video. Yes, please like the video. I am a growing channel. I have a lot of intelligent people like Dak and Reed who come on these live streams, and we discuss the news and we discuss solutions to our political problems in our world. Thank you so much for coming to the show and watching this live stream. So I put out a video this morning that I worked on last night, and in that video I worked with Anthony Reyes, who's in the chat, on researching Avril Haines. Dak, I don't know if you looked into Avril Haines, but she's being appointed to, let me make sure I get the name right of that position. But okay, the Director of National Intelligence.
Yes.
And this lady in my video that I put out earlier today, I said that she is the spook of all spooks because of all these things that she's been involved with in the past, like Event 201, Palantir. Dak and Reed, did you guys look into Avril Haines at all? Do you guys know anything about her?
Yeah, I actually talked about her a bit in my the episode of Overwritten Extra, focusing on Mr. Blinken. I should have done separate videos, but in any case, it doesn't matter. Yeah, she is being nominated as the Director of National Intelligence. The first thing I saw when I looked into her is that she's an alum of the Georgetown University Law Center, which is a really bad sign in itself. But she also served in the Obama administration, of course. She was the Deputy National Security Advisor, and she replaced none other than Antony Blinken. You see that there's this revolving door going between not just within the Obama administration, but also within the new Biden administration. And she wasn't just the Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama. She was also the Deputy Director of the CIA. She took over just a few months after Edward Snowden released his documents, which may or may not have been an interesting coincidental timing. But obviously, a woman who served as Deputy National Security Advisor to any president of the United States, but particularly one like Barack Obama with his appalling record of violent imperialism. I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to expect out of this selection. But to return to my favorite subject of WikiLeaks, Avril Haines had some interesting commentary. She contributed to the United States Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election. And what's interesting is that Avril Haines said that the Obama administration, this is almost an exact quote, the Obama administration did not attempt to introduce legislation to sanction the Russian government because they did not believe it would get bipartisan support. So instead of doing that, they decided to focus on options that could be pursued by executive order. So in other words, she knew that the Obama administration was not going to be able to convince a large section of the public or even elected officials to get on board with sanctioning the Russian government, and so Obama decided to use executive order to hammer them instead. That, by the way, could be a preview of what might happen under the Biden administration.
All right. So before we get to Reed, I just want to let you know, Dak, that your buddy Pierce stopped by to show some love in the chat.
Thank you, Pierce.
But what do you think, Reed? What does Haynes sound like to you?
So I just for anyone who's jumping on now, I said this before, but I've been on vacation all week, and the only people I really know a lot about is Neera Tanden and Janet Yellen. So I'm kind of stumbling through the rest of this, but yeah, I don't know a lot, but it sounds like more of the same. But I don't want to talk out of my ass, so.
Well, Dak was bringing up how she is. She's a big advocate for Russiagate and how we need to censor people. And Reed and Dak, are you guys familiar with Event 201 at all?
I don't know if I am.
Okay, I'll fill you guys in on this stuff because it's crazy. So Event 201. I'm pulling up my notes right now so I can. Okay, here it is. Wait, no, never mind. So Event 201, for people who don't know, it was a pandemic tabletop. It was a pandemic
yes.
tabletop fictional exercise. It was hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Johnson and Johnson, and there were many high-ranking officials that attended, like officials from the WHO, officials from the CDC, people like George Gao, who's a virologist, and he's from the Chinese CDC. And it was supposed to be an exercise of how prepared we are for a pandemic. And this exercise was done in October 2019, before there was any like big news on the coronavirus at all. Like before, so then in that event, there's like 5 or 6 videos. Avril Haines is there, and she's talking about how she's gonna work with trusted sources, like who would be like a trusted source, like Wikipedia, like something people trust, like mainstream media. People trust Google. They're gonna work with those people, with those with those outlets to censor information that goes against any information that they want people to know about the virus. And in Event 201, they're not calling it like COVID-19 or anything. They're calling it the H1N1 virus.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she's also served in Palantir. And let me just let everybody know what Palantir is. So Palantir, this is a company that was given the contract to come up with the vaccine allocation strategy and determine the critical populations each vaccine should be distributed to. Palantir was founded by Peter Thiel, was initially funded by QTL, the CIA's venture capital arm. The CIA was its only client for the first 3 years of its existence. At present, Palantir is a contractor to 17 U.S. intelligence agencies and also the U.S. military. She was the diversity consultant of Palantir. So she was consulting them on which populations are likely need to have like the vaccine first. So it sounds like she's a big time spook. And what do we see happening now? Like these are things that they were discussing over a year ago. A lot of these things that were being discussed in that event are coming to fruition now, where accounts that are digging deep into the research on COVID, like The Last American Vagabond, and exposing mainstream media narratives, they're getting their accounts taken down. Derek Bros, who was the host of The Conscious Resistance, got his account taken down. The Last American Vagabond got his main account taken down, and now he has to start a new channel. But what does this sound like to you guys?
It's kind of terrifying because some libertarians have correctly pointed out that, a private company can choose to, platform whatever it wants. But when the government is working hand in hand with social media platforms to black out information, that should terrify everybody. And I know the First Amendment technically said Congress shall pass no law limiting free speech, but they're sort of circumnavigating that process. They don't really have to pass a law when they have partnerships with these giant social media companies and news organizations, and they can get them to say or censor whatever they want. I don't really see how that's any different. And I don't necessarily think there's a legislative response to that, but I think that pointing it out and exposing it is all we can do. And but I don't know, because once you have the government regulating what is true and what isn't, I don't see how that's any better than where we are now. But it is terrifying, and it's what you read about in the books 1984 or
Yeah.
Brave New World. It's happening now. And I don't think people realize it. I like what Dak said on one of my episodes, that people should read more books instead of just news articles, because books put you in a hypothetical situation where there are no labels that make you feel a certain way, and you can look objectively at a situation, and then you can tie it into what's going on now. I would recommend that for people.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been talking a lot about the merger of the media and the state, and the Obama administration has obviously been heavily involved in this. We see how Susan Rice sits on the board of Netflix. We've seen Neera Tanden, who was a Clinton confidant, ergo an Obama affiliate. She's had a prominent role in the media. Avril Haines, her nomination was the subject of widespread praise in the media, because apparently, if she's confirmed, she will be the first woman to hold the position of Director of National Intelligence. The implication is that because she's a woman, she's therefore moral or trustworthy or something like that. So this situation with Event 201, it doesn't surprise me in the least, considering her own record. She worked with John Brennan during his time in the Obama administration, and was very much an advocate for the droning program that has become one of the main points of shame for Obama's legacy. She also, according to, of all sources, Wikipedia even has an interesting paragraph describing Haines as an outspoken supporter of Gina Haspel when President Trump nominated her as director of the CIA. And for those who don't really understand what all the fuss is about vis-a-vis Haspel, in the aftermath of the Patriot Act, the CIA operated a number of black sites, undisclosed locations where suspects of terrorism and other political criminals were tortured. Gina Haspel was involved in the administration of apparently several of those sites. And when video evidence emerged of CIA operatives torturing suspects, Haspel personally destroyed quite a bit of that evidence. And this is the type of woman that Avril Haines has gone to bat for. And so we can expect that she's going to take a similarly ruthless approach of her own in her administration of the Office of National Intelligence. It's obviously very, very grim, and people should be concerned. But the evidence is also right out there in the open. As I said earlier, we don't need WikiLeaks to tell us any of this. You just have to follow the professional trail, and you'll see where these people made their bones, and you'll see what they've done in the past, and you can develop a pattern here.
It's so frightening. I mean, we're already seeing like these labels under videos. Like if you talk about Biden, they already like put a link to the AP and about what they say about the election. If you talk about COVID, they link you to like the CDC. Expect more of that with Avril Haines. Like I'm scared to even talk about her on my video right now, but I mean, we have to deliver the news to people. So expect censorship to be ramped up way more with her serving as national intelligence. So Dak and Reed, is there anything else you guys want to say about this woman? I mean, in Event 201, they were also talking about the hypothetical vaccine and how they were going to deal with people who protest against it, and how they were going to manufacture consent by saying all these nice things about the vaccine on trusted sources, and how they're going to take down channels that present disinformation that goes against the information that they want to present. Do you guys have any final words about this?
Yeah, I mean, I have, I've taken the flu shot before. I've never been an anti-vax person. I've always thought that the government should not mandate vaccines, but I've never been personally against them. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories that a year ago I would have just completely written off, but it's hard. And they make that harder and harder now. I mean, the it's really disturbing. And I mean, if the vaccines are good and they work, why do we need to suppress information about them? Isn't that the whole idea, that if something is good, that the winning ideas, the true information will win out in the end? I mean, any time in history where bad information or disinformation has won, it's been because of the government backing it up, pretty much. I mean, like the Nazis in the 1930s, they suppressed counter information to what they were preaching. I can't think of too many times where a completely unbased movement took over without some sort of state support of their message. So it's really disturbing to me that that's where we are now.
Well, we've been the subject of the media and the state. I mean, you can rely on a very neoliberal press to do the bidding of the Biden administration and to go to bat for them. As we speak, I see that Andrea Mitchell, who is an MSNBC correspondent, she is trending on Twitter because she criticized the Biden administration for not being as forthcoming as they could have been about Joe Biden's foot injury. For those who have not heard the story, Joe Biden has some micro fractures in his foot. He was walking his dog or something like that. I mean, it's nothing life-threatening, but it's just a story that should be of interest. And you see all the neoliberal commentators, like that awful person, Brooklyn Dad, compared her to, I don't know, he's just making fun of her. It's everybody mocking her because she's raising questions about this. People are flipping her off through GIFs, and it's a very hateful example of the intolerance people have for any skepticism or criticism of the as yet unformed Biden administration. So you can expect that once the administration actually comes into power, you're going to see the intolerance for criticism increase tenfold.
Okay, so who do you guys want to talk about next? I have here Alejandro Mayorkas. I have Cedric Richmond.
I
Janet Yellen.
I mean, the only two left that I actually know anything about are Ashley Etienne and Jen Psaki. Those are the only two left that I can actually comment on, because the others, there's so many people coming down the pipe. I can't research them all so soon.
Yeah. Go ahead and tell us, because you were telling me a little bit about Etienne before we went live. So why don't you tell the audience about who she is and what position she is going to serve?
Yeah, Ashley Etienne. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. I've heard it. Maybe it's Etienne. I don't know. I'm just going to call her Etienne. Etienne. You'll have to forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Currently, she is the communications director for Nancy Pelosi. And we mentioned how Avril Haines is receiving a bunch of praise because she would be the first female director of national intelligence. Apparently, Ashley Etienne is the first woman and the first person of color to hold the title of communications director for the Speaker of the House. I guess we're supposed to celebrate that. But she is going to become Kamala Harris's communications director. And if you want to learn about her, the best article is actually at 3percentmovement.com. That's 3, the number. And this is supposed to be depicting her in a positive light. And yet this is what the article says. Quote, Ashley was the architect of the Democrats' culture of corruption strategy against the GOP. Ashley's work coordinating nearly a dozen congressional committees to pursue the Trump-Russia investigation and expose broader misconduct in the Trump administration dominated daily headlines, drove 4 cabinet secretaries to resign under a cloud of scandal, and set the stage for the Democrats' historic midterm victory. So, in other words, the article states, while attempting to praise her, that she created this strategy of the, quote, culture of corruption intended to convince the American people through mass media propaganda that Trump was colluding with the Russians. This is a gigantic lie, and she's receiving praise for it, including people resigning. I mean, you have to wonder, did she have anything to do with the Michael Flynn case? I mean, it's a shocking. This is a public relations website, as far as I can see, and this information is put right out there in the open.
It's like pretty much everybody who we've talked about has some connection to propping up Russiagate. Like this is like the tensions with Russia. It seems like it's going to continue to escalate to fulfill the geopolitical interests of the elite. So Reed, where do you see this going? Like our military budget is just going to keep going up with these people, don't you think?
Yes. I mean, it's weird because Obama had less than half the military budget Trump does, but Joe Biden has said that he'll add to it. You know, I was I was hoping that one thing we might get is less military spending, but that's obviously not going to happen. The pick that I have done the most research on and that I know a little bit about was Janet Yellen for Treasury Secretary, and she was chairman of the Federal Reserve from 2014 to 2018. So under Trump for a little while. She was terrible, but I don't really think Jerome Powell has been any better. This is the thing, you know, a lot of Trump supporters wanted me to vote for Trump or want me to be a Republican because in theory they're slightly better than the Democrats. But if you look at Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell, you know, I agree more with someone like Peter Schiff, who is way over here. And then you've got Jerome Powell, Janet Yellen. I mean, they're so much more similar to each other than I am to either of them. Janet Yellen is a huge proponent of low interest rates, and that might sound like a good thing when you first hear it, but that's what has destroyed the middle class in this country is low interest rates, because people who don't have a lot of money end up buying a lot more than they should be able to. So they get payment after payment after payment, and they go into debt. They never pay anything off. They never own anything in their entire lives. And a lot of times they end up with a job that doesn't pay well, and they become a slave to that job because they can't branch out and try anything different because they're doing nothing but making payments on their cars, their houses, you know, their student loans, whatever it is. So I was not surprised at all that was his pick for Treasury Secretary, but I am certainly no fan of hers. So there you go. I actually contributed something to the conversation on a pick. So
no, your opinions and your instinct on a lot of these people and the commentary you gave were really good for the other cabinet picks that we were talking about. But
I do have a quote for Reed here if he's interested. This is also from Wikipedia about Yellen. On June 27, 2017, Yellen generated controversy when she stated that she did not expect another financial crisis in our lifetime. Yellen explained that this assumption can be made due to her belief that banks are very much stronger as a result of Federal Reserve oversight.
Yeah, and if you listen to Peter Schiff, he has been saying there's going to be a recession for years. You know, he kind of predicted the 2008 housing crisis, and for the last actually right after Trump got elected, he even said there is going to be a recession in Trump's first term and he will not get reelected because of it. And a lot of people want to throw everything at COVID-19's feet for why our economy is such a disaster right now. That has made it worse, but it wasn't the strongest economy in world history that suddenly had a load of bricks dropped on it. Right. The coronavirus was more like pulling the veil away, or the pin that pricked the bubble, yes, as he would say. It's the economy has been a disaster waiting to happen, and the COVID-19 was actually the perfect scapegoat. So you can add that to your list of, possible conspiracies as to why COVID could have been manufactured as an excuse. So
Yeah, I'm not, look, for the audience out there, I'm not like being, like, I'm not aligning myself to any like theories about it. Like, I'm not going to say it's like a bioweapon or anything, but what I will say for sure is that it really does seem like they're taking advantage of this to fulfill the agendas of the elite.
yes.
And I think Reed and Dag would agree with that as well. Um, one of
Yes. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
say the last bit, because I'm gonna say something about Alejandro Mayorkas.
Okay. Yeah, Whitney Webb has hypothesized that this economic shutdown was what she calls a controlled demolition of the economy, the intention of which was to basically rip off the Band-Aid. The government and the financial sector knew that this artificial economy, these voodoo economics, were not going to last forever, and there was going to be a crash, so they decided to engineer the crash. I do not subscribe to the theory that the coronavirus was introduced because of Donald Trump, but I do believe that perhaps this pandemic was expedited because of Trump's election. Perhaps there were powerful people who said, all right, well, we might as well we can waste a disposable puppet like this guy, and they didn't mind his reputation going down the drain because of it. That would be my assumption at this point in time.
Yeah, I would agree too, because if you look at all the people who we're talking about, their connections with the intelligence is so strong. So it's very safe to say that Biden was the preferred candidate by the intelligence and by big tech. Dak, before I ask you about the last woman that you researched, I do want to bring up Alejandro Mayorkas, who's going to be the Secretary of Homeland Security. And he was also receiving a lot of praise because he is a Latino. But here's the information that I gathered from him. So this is from RT. It says, similarly, Alejandro Mayorkas was described as both a consummate professional who would rid the Homeland Security Department of the chaos, dysfunction, and absolute cruelty of the Trump administration, and an immigrant, a Latino who knows we are a nation of law and values. However, while Mayorkas has been lauded by liberals for championing a path to citizenship for immigrants, he also occupied the number 2 spot at the department at the Obama administration, detained and caged children, and deported more immigrants than any other administration in U.S. history. Isn't that ironic? And that was me saying that it's ironic, not RT. But in the Washington Times, I believe this is a right-wing outlet. I'm just going to read the last paragraph here that I have in my notes from this outlet. His more than 7 years in office also saw their share of controversy, with an inspector general finding he delivered favors in granting immigration visas at the request of high-powered Democrats. That's likely to draw attention from Republicans. He also was Deputy Secretary, Undersecretary Jed Johnson, when the department grappled with the first surge of migrant children and families in 2014 and 2015. The department dramatically expanded family detention from 100 beds to 3,000 beds and built the chain-link fence pens, now derided as cages, used to hold immigrants who were in the country illegally at the border. Get rid of those detention centers, free all those poor innocent children that are being kept there. But Dak and Reed, what are your thoughts on Alejandro Mayorkas?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And I don't know. It's hilarious that immigration was such a central part of the Democratic campaign this year, last year. That was brought up so many times. I remember there was one point on the stage where they asked, are illegal immigrants going to be included in your health care plan? Raise your hand if yes. And I think everyone who was on the stage that night raised his hand. And I don't know. It's just all this virtue signaling to come down to more of the same in the end. But I didn't hear any outcry when Obama was president about deportations. I actually didn't even know that we had deported more immigrants under him than any other president until after his term was over, and I started doing more research about it. It was such a non-issue because Republicans don't care about immigrants and Democrats only pretend to care about them. But I'm interested to see, all these movements and all these protesters and everybody just back away from caring about immigrants. It'll be interesting to see who actually really cares and is going to stay consistent versus who doesn't.
Well, it's interesting how this policy, the family separation policy, which is so broadly unpopular, is something that the Biden administration cannot commit to repealing. I mean, I'm not even sure what the corporate incentive is here, because they don't have to abolish immigration and customs enforcement. They don't have to even make any sweeping changes to immigration law. But this particular policy, which is so controversial, they really cannot bring themselves just to repeal it, just to make themselves look good. It's interesting how the country has become so corrupt and so bloodthirsty and so authoritarian that politicians cannot even do things that are politically expedient, even if it doesn't damage anybody except this abstract entity known as the state. It shows you how feeble and impotent politicians really are, and that, of course, supports my theory that voting is a gigantic waste of time.
Red Sea Socialist, I saw that you had a really good comment here. She said, Dems care about immigrants because they don't want to be questioned about, which is going to result in more refugees, which is probably why one of the reasons for why Antony Blinken went on Sesame Street to educate children and Grover on refugees, even though he is the one who is responsible for creating them. Dak, who is the last who is the last person that you conducted research on that you want to talk about here today?
That would be Jen Psaki, not to be confused with Lake Winnipesaukee. She is apparently going to be the White House press secretary for President Biden. And once again, this is a woman who has a long history of working with establishment Democrats. She worked for, I believe she is from, she worked quite a bit in Iowa. She worked for Senator Tom Harkin's reelection campaign, Governor Tom Vilsack's reelection campaign. She was the deputy press secretary for John Kerry in his presidential campaign. And just one interesting note here is that she was, for a year, she was the communications director for Congressman Joseph Crowley, the same Joseph Crowley who 12 years later would be dethroned by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I just thought that was an interesting note there. Psaki then worked she worked for Barack Obama's presidential campaign, and she became the deputy press secretary, deputy communications director. She also became a spokesperson for the United States Department of State. So she was obviously very much involved in defending the State Department's increasingly corrupt activities during Obama's reign. And then when President Obama left office, she found herself unemployed, and she began working as a political commentator for CNN. And it's, again, I will beat this dead horse until there is nothing left but glue, the merger of media and state. And in November, she joined the Biden-Harris transition team, leaving her job at CNN because she knew that she was going to find a job in the Biden administration. The revolving door continues once again. And obviously, we mentioned earlier how Avril Haines was praised because it's showing the diversity of the cabinet. Jen Psaki has been another one of those names. This is supposed to be some kind of feminist revolution because she's going to be in the Biden cabinet. But something tells me that the media is not going to be asking her any inconvenient questions once she's standing behind the pulpit.
Yeah, none of these people are going to be asked that. Go ahead, Ray.
Sorry. I was just saying, Janet Yellen was the first woman Federal Reserve chair too, so that was a move forward apparently. But.
Yep.
Yeah, so the last person that I'm going to mention here for people who haven't heard, but I have made a video about this, is Cedric Richmond. And I just want to bring this up because I care a lot about the environment. He's not going to serve in any climate position, but that will be John Kerry, who we didn't touch upon. But Cedric Richmond, he's going to be in the Office of Public Engagement, and this is, I'm just gonna read what I presented in a video when I discussed about him from Jacobin magazine. It says, during his 10 years in Congress, Richmond has received roughly $341,000 from donors in the oil and gas industry, the fifth highest total among House Democrats, according to previous reporting by Sludge. That includes corporate political action committee donations of $50,000 from Entergy, an electric and natural gas utility, $40,000 from ExxonMobil, and $10,000 apiece from oil companies Chevron, Phillips 66, and Valero Energy. And he was also voted against many environmental policies, even against some of the more moderate Democrats. So this is what you're getting under Joe Biden. Nothing fundamentally changes on foreign policy. Nothing fundamentally changes on civil liberties. Nothing fundamentally changes on environmental policy. It's just more of the same establishment corporatist policies that we've been getting now for decades, just exacerbating more and more and more. Reed and Dak, do you guys want to give any closing remarks before we close the stream here?
Yeah, well, I have opinions on the environment. What does he think about nuclear? Do you know? Has he talked about it?
What does Cedric Richmond think about nuclear? Yeah. I doubt he thinks about anything positive about it, because he receives money from the fossil fuel industry. So it's his interest to more than likely demonize nuclear.
Yeah, that's I feel like there are two massive movements against nuclear, and it's actually the green energy industry and the fossil fuels industry. Yeah. Because green energy has a lot of imperialism wrapped up in it. I mean, people wonder why we cooed Venezuela. They have lots of lithium. There's nuclear is a cheap, I mean, it's expensive right now because it's not widely used, but it is a relatively cheap, safe, very low waste alternative that there's an extensive fear-mongering campaign against. But countries like India, who have poor populations, are starting to use more modern versions of nuclear energy. And I think it's really something that could save a lot of people money. It could really help a lot of poor states, poor communities, poor countries. And I think it could rapidly send fossil fuels into the past as a form of power production. But there's no incentive for nuclear because there's no way that lobbyists can make tons and tons of money off of it. It's unlikely that the military is going to make tons of money off of it. And that's why you see like neither side really heavily supported. It's sort of just that boogeyman that nobody touches. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I think nuclear should at least be talked about a lot more, especially with the new thorium reactors, that if there's an earthquake or a tsunami or some disaster, they can just separate the two materials and a reaction can't happen anymore. Our nuclear power plants that we still have are 40 years old. There have really only been a few isolated incidents where things went wrong, and in all of those incidents, they were not unforeseen possibilities, especially with Chernobyl. There was an arrogant engineer who kept pushing the plant beyond the capacity they were supposed to because he was trying to prove something, and then there was a meltdown. Fukushima, there was a tsunami. It wasn't like something just went catastrophically wrong. So I think to have any real progress in any timely fashion, dealing with the environment, people should start talking about nuclear more. And I haven't seen any high-profile people ever talk about it.
Yeah.
You have either AOC or Dan Crenshaw. AOC wants all solar panels and wind turbines, and Dan Crenshaw wants all natural gas. And both of those have lobbyists.
Yeah.
Nuclear doesn't. So that's just my 2 cents. But
Yeah.
Well, Ron, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've been educating myself more on nuclear, and I initially had negative thoughts behind it, but I want to thank PCG from my Discord for sending me all these links, and I've been seeing nuclear more positively now. Go ahead, Dak.
Well, the real unfortunate thing about the demonization of nuclear energy, which people don't ever talk about, is that when you see nuclear energy be explored in some countries, it isn't being explored with the benefit of a full and dedicated history of research on the subject because it's been so demonized. If people were willing to explore nuclear energy, you would see more public funding for research, development, ways to refine the process, make it more sophisticated and effective, and nuclear energy could be more widely understood, not just by the laity, but also by professionals. And yeah, the demonization has been very unfortunate. There's a good book that came out in 2004 or 2005 called The End of Oil, written by Paul Roberts, and he talks a little bit in that book about the great potential for nuclear energy. It really has unlimited potential, and yes, there are some significant potential downsides, which is precisely why safety should be the first concern. But just because there have been high-profile disasters does not mean that we are going to have high-profile disasters at every opportunity. And there have been plenty of high-profile disasters with oil. I mean, we all remember the BP spill from 10 years ago. So it's when people try to demonize nuclear energy and point to something else, it's a great example of the pot calling the kettle black. Now, one thing I want to say about Cedric Richmond, according to Wikipedia, I'm amazed that this information has not yet been scrubbed from Wikipedia. Cedric Richmond is the 5th biggest recipient of money from fossil fuel donors among House Democrats. He voted to authorize the Keystone XL pipeline, and in 2010, Barack Obama appeared in a television commercial for Richmond's reelection campaign. So if he's having that cozy of a relationship with President Obama, then he's not a good person. That, I guess, is the big that is the main message I would take away from all of these people that we've been talking about is, in light of how cozy they are with the Obama administration, we can rest assured that they're not going to be doing anything helpful.
Yeah, not at all. And the media is going to be gaslighting us. Just to close off a little bit on the nuclear, check out that video that I have with PCG. There will be more to come the more I educate myself. But it's clear that the oil lobby and these big green tech companies are threatened by it. What else was I going to say about it? I was going to say some. Oh. Wait, no. I was going to say something important about it. Let me see if I remember. The negative outcomes that we get from fossil fuel are way worse than the negative outcomes that we get from nuclear. Like these deaths that are caused by pollution from fossil fuel and fossil fuel emissions, like contributing to climate change, like that's going to lead to innumerable amount of chaos and deaths. So yeah, you cannot compare the destruction that you'll get from fossil fuel to the rare cases that you get from nuclear energy. And there's a lot of research that's being done into the safety of nuclear energy. The France model is something that we can look into. But I think we can close off here. We are approaching the 90-minute mark of our show. Dak and Reed, thank you guys so much for coming on. You guys provided great insight into this conversation, and hopefully you helped the audience realize, if they haven't yet realized, that nothing is going to fundamentally change. You guys have any final remarks you guys want to make? Any shout outs to your shows or Any recommendations, like book recommendations or anything that you want to share to the audience?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was kind of last minute. I just want to apologize for not knowing much about anybody other than the few people
No,
I
you contributed a lot, bro. Like
Yeah, you're good.
I enjoyed having you on. I learned a lot.
But yeah, check out my YouTube channel, The Naturalist Capitalist, or follow me on Twitter at Reed Coverdale. So, thank you.
And you can find me on my YouTube channel, Dak Rouleau. I also write at overwritten.org, though recently not as frequently as I've been making videos. I am on Twitter at Dak Rouleau, although probably going to be looking to get off of that app pretty soon. It looks like it's about to become a cesspool once again now that Joe Biden is getting set to take office. So I'm hoping to be off Twitter, hopefully within the next 6 months.
I will remain on Twitter as long as I can to try to wake as many people up as I can. I'm still on Facebook also, but only for close friends and family. I don't have like a Facebook for this show, although that is something that I might develop. Catch me on Discord. We have a great community. A lot of people who are in the chat right now are members. If you're not a member of my Discord, there's a link in the description. Highly recommend. We have a lot of fun, a lot of different topics to discuss. And other than that, don't forget to stay informed. Take care, everyone. I love you guys.
Thank you.